converting units. A lot of you hate it, but once you get the technique, it's actually really easy. Instead of talking about exactly how many grams we have, let's say that I weighed some sugar for a cake and decided that there was 1,250 grams of sugar. Instead of talking about everything in terms of grams, it's often a lot easier to talk about it in terms of kilograms. So gram is our basic unit here of weight that we often use. Litre is our basic volume that we often use, and our basic length unit that we often use is metre. That's why I put them all in line. These are our basic meters. Then when our basic units, then when we want to change the unit, we can just put a little number, a letter in front. So if we'd like to talk about decimeters, a deci means 1/10 of a meter. Okay? So I've written deci to the right of meter to show that it's 1/10 smaller. So if I had 1 meter and wondered how many decimeters that would be, it would be 10 decimeters. I'd multiply by 10 to go from meter to decimeter. To go from decimeter to centimeter, I'd multiply by 10 again. And to go from centimeter to millimeter, I'd multiply by 10 again. Deci is 1/10 of a meter. Centi is 1/100th of a meter. Why is it 1/100th if it only says times 10 here? Because I'm going from meter to centimeter. So I'd have to first multiply by 10 to get to deci, and by 10 to get to centimeter. 10 times 10 is 100. So if we're going to jump straight from meter to centimeter, we would multiply by 2 lots of 10. 10 times 10. 10 squared, or 100. If I was going to go from meter to millimeter, I'd multiply by 10 by 10 by 10. It'd be the same as multiplying by 1,000. All of those zeros would have to be there. So let's fill in the rest then. What does the word kilo mean? Well, kilo is 1,000 times bigger than a meter. So if I had 1 kilometer and wondered how many meters that would be, I'd multiply it by 1,000. Swedish mil, the Swedish thing that you have that we don't use in England, and that's why I've used the Swedish spelling. 1 Swedish mil is 10 kilometers. Okay, don't mix it up with the English mile. We spell that with an E on the end, and it's something totally different. It's our imperial units. It's about 1,700 meters. So don't mix it up with that one. Then we have, the good thing about these units is they're repeated. So when it comes to litre to deciliter, oh, it's times 10. Litres to centiliters, times 10. Centiliters to millimeters, times 10. So going that way, it's always multiplied. And going the other way, if I was going from milliliters to centiliters, I'll divide by 10. Centiliters to deciliters, I'll divide by 10. Deciliters to liters, I'll divide by 10. Hectoliter to litre. Well, what does the word hecto mean? Hecto is times 100. So a hectoliter, 1 hectoliter is 100 litres. And litres to hectoliters are divided by 100. So here as well, I'll do exactly the opposite of what I've got up here. Divide by 1,000, divide by 10 if I was going from decimeters to meters, divide by 10 if I was going from centimeters to decimeters, divide by 10 if I was going from millimeters to centimeters. Then we can fill in exactly the same thing again for grams. Grams to milligrams. Well, milli means 1,000, so if I had 1 gram, it would be the same as 1,000 milligrams. So to go from milligrams to grams, I would need to divide by 1,000. That's 10 times 10 times 10. 10 cubed is 1,000. Grams to hectogram. Well, we know that to go from hectogram to gram, here you have to think of sweeties, okay? 1 hectogram is 100 grams when you're buying your Saturday sweets. Grams to hectograms, we'd have to divide by 100. The word hecto always means 100 times. Kilogram to hectogram. Well, to go from kilo to hecto, we only need to multiply by 10. We've already got 2 zeros here, and we need 3 to get 1,000. So here we'd have to divide by 10. To go from kilograms to grams, which is the one we're used to, we'd multiply by 10 cubed. 10 cubed means 10 times 10 times 10. To go from grams to kilograms, we would divide by 1,000. What about a ton then? How much does a ton weigh? Well, 1 ton weighs 1,000 kilograms. So an elephant, we wouldn't talk about how many kilograms or grams an elephant weighed. We'd talk about how many tons an elephant weighed. So if an elephant weighs 5 tons, that means it weighs 5,000 kilograms. Kilograms to ton then, if we'd like to say, okay, this car weighs 4,750 kilograms, it's a very big car. How many tons would it be? Well, we'd divide by 1,000. We'd move the decimal point 3 places back to give us a weight of 4.75 tons. And notice that I use the metric form of ton here because in England we have an imperial form of ton that we spell like that. And again, it's nothing that you guys would like to work with, I don't think, our English metric tons, like our inches, feet. Okay, let's take a few examples then. Let's say we'd like to go from 1.2 decimeters and change it into millimeters. And this is really easy once you've set up your table like this. And I'd like you all to set up these 3 symbols in your maths book somewhere. Last page of your maths book, for example. I'd recommend you writing it in. You can do that in a minute. Let's go through the examples first. 1.2 decimeters into millimeters. Right, we're going to go from decimeters, which is a big unit. Okay? And we're going to go from here to millimeters. And we're going to jump over these stepping stones like we're a frog. Jumping. Okay? So we're going to go from decimeters to millimeters by first multiplying by 110 and then multiplying by 10 again. So the answer that we'd get here is 1.2 times 10 times 10. For every 0 here, I move the decimal point 2 places, 120 millimeters. And that's my final answer. So for every 0 that I've jumped up here, I move my decimal point 2 places. Just like the technique that I showed you in the video we just made. 25 centimeters to meters then. Now we're going from small unit to big unit. So now we're going backwards. Now we're not a frog jumping on the stepping stones. We're a frog swimming underneath the water. From a small unit to a big unit. So now we have to divide from centimeters, first by 10 to give us meters, to give us decimeters, and then by another 10 to get all the way back to meters. So we're taking 25 divided by 100, which we know is just to move the decimal point 2 places back, 1, 2, giving us the answer 0.25 meters. So this technique is very useful. You don't have any big, complicated calculations. 1.5 liters then into deciliters. Well, here we have liters, and we'd like to change our litre measurements, 1.5 litres, into deciliters. Litre is a big measurement, deciliters is a smaller measurement. Litres, carton of milk, deciliters, the little measurement you have. So we'll multiply by 10. We're going from big to small, multiply. So we have 1.5 multiplied by 10. Move the decimal point 1 place for the 0, giving us 15 deciliters. So 1.5 litres is 15 deciliters. What about milliliters to deciliters then? Well, we're going from a small unit to a big unit, so we're going underneath. Milliliters to deciliters, I've got to divide by 2 lots of 0. So this one is going to be 130 divided by 100. 2 lots of zeros, so 10 squared, which is 100. Giving me the answer 1.3 deciliters. So 130 milliliters is the same as 1.3 deciliters. What about kilograms then? I've got 480 grams, and I'd like to go from 480 grams into kilograms. To go from grams to kilograms, I have to divide by 1,000. I'm going from a small unit to a big unit, therefore I'm dividing. Always. So this one we get by 480 divided by 1,000. 3 zeros down here, so I move my decimal point 3 places back. 0.48. 1, 2, 3. Giving me 0.48 of a kilogram. Point 0.02 grams into milligrams then. Grams is the big unit, and I'm changing to milligrams, the small unit. So I'm going from big to small. I multiply by 1,000. So 0.02 grams multiplied by 1,000. I have 3 zeros here, so I move my decimal point 3 places back. 1, 2, 3. It's going to give me 20 milligrams. So 0.02 of a gram is the same as 20 milligrams. And this is how we use prefixes, okay? So we just say that the letter K, the prefix K, stands for kilo. It always means times 1,000. The letter H, the prefix H, stands for hecto, and it always means times 100. The prefix D for deci always means 1/10 of. Centi always means 100th of. Milli always means 1,000th of. And prefix just tells you which letter stands for that.